Missouri Politics Midweek Update brought to you by our good friends at United Fiber and the Courtyard by Marriott. Um, Bringing in big news I've been at the farm in SEMO for a few days. So been down there talking hogs, dogs, and logs. First of all, shout out right off the top, Ben Travelos. Everybody at the Implement Dealership says he did a hell of a job at the Farm Bureau meeting in Butler County, lit it on fire. Great job, Ben. Nice Butler County Farm Bureau meeting. So I've been down in the I've been down there, but I'm back now on Thursday. And look, one of the big issues, right, is abortion. It no matter how it cuts. Now, when we had general elections, it cut in general elections. Now we only have primaries. It cuts in primaries, and where the two may meet and may have a general election appeal impact is going to be on some referendums that are put on after the Roe versus Wade and the trigger law that outlawed abortion. I wanted to bring on someone who's worked on the pro-choice side in this state. If you go back 2 or 3 weeks, we had we had the Missouri Right to Life folks on, and she did a very good job outlining her position, where her opposition is going to be, where it's going to come from. Now I want to bring on Mallory Schwartz. If we could bring in Mallory. Well, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics Midweek Update. I appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here to talk about this exciting news.
And we can actually hear you, which is a technological innovation for the Missouri Times. I really appreciate you offering to go first. Usually these things blow up and suck. So thank you for coming in on this split screen thing. It's our first one. I appreciate it.
Absolutely glad to be here.
All right. Now, let me just give you my West Butler County feel. People vote, especially when Roe versus Wade was a law of land, there was some level of pro-choice. I've always felt most Missourians don't understand the levels of, most guys don't know details of pregnancy, and most Missourians don't understand different abortion procedures, but they were very willing to vote for candidates that were pro-life. I watched Jeffco, right, go from Democrat to Republican. I don't think they changed their views on guns and abortion. However, that was when the people that have the right are usually, it's like the people who are in the White House, right? They're a little fatter and lazier, and they're not as motivated. When they're out of the White House, they're angry and motivated. Pro-lifers didn't have what they wanted, so they were very angry and motivated. And in politics, you've been around not just this type of politics, you've been around politics of many sorts for a long time. It's the greatest curse to get what you want, right? When you get what you want, well, then you get fat and lazy, and you get what you want. So big referendum in Ohio, lots of similarities to Missouri, has become a reliably Republican state, but a little slower than Missouri has, but still has kind of followed that same trajectory into the red state column. Maybe not as extreme, but certainly there. They had a referendum essentially on abortion, right? Can you raise the threshold, which would have cut out a referendum I'm sure they're working on, to 60%, and it went down in flames. Tell folks about it.
Yeah, what's interesting is Ohio and Missouri have been kind of on parallel tracks with these attacks on the initiative petition process. Missouri Republicans have been fully transparent all
True.
year that their efforts to get rid of our rights to make change at the ballot box to our Constitution or use the IP process is about one thing, and that's about abortion. And that's from the speaker saying back in the spring that the bills moving to attack IP are for the purpose of blocking an abortion ballot, to the Right to Lifers saying just a few weeks ago that they are colluding with state leadership to slow down any current effort to put abortion access on the ballot, to just this week where Koenig, in his run for treasurer, said that he is open to gumming up the process to block Missourians from being able to vote on this issue. Ohio has had the same thing, with millions dumped into trying to block them from being able to take a vote of the people on abortion. And what we saw on Tuesday night was a 57-43 vote in favor of protecting people's right to access the ballot and allowing them to move forward with a vote in November on abortion access.
Now, to me, right now, it is the same process pretty much to get something on the ballot to change the Constitution as a statute in Missouri. To me, you folks up in Hannibal, Worth County, Stoddard County, they have no voice. Nobody even asked for their signatures to put something on the ballot. It does seem like in Missouri, it's pretty easy to change the Constitution. It feels like it's about the right amount to change a statute with the vote of the people. But I mean, would it be the worst thing in the world to make it a little harder to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot?
Yeah, I think that's actually really misleading. It's not easy to change the Constitution. Abortion Action Missouri, our organization, has been involved in efforts to do initiative petitions over the past 5 years. And it is not easy to collect signatures across the state, hundreds of thousands of signatures, in order to get something either for a statutory
Okay,
change
you got to
or
tell
a
me now. This is
constitutional
what I
amendment.
think happens, right? Somebody has a map of the state out, right? And they're like, "Oh, we ain't going to Sykeston." And they're like, "Oh, well, they get a map. We're not going to Kirksville." Like everybody, that Republicans and Democrats that collect signatures, they just write off the north and southeast part of the state because it doesn't matter. It is pretty much the same process to put something on the ballot for a statute, which could be changed very easily, than the Constitution, which will be changed by the voters. It is those two things are very different in impacts, but very similar in how you do them.
I mean, it's almost twice the number of signatures. And I think that people look at the populous areas of the state, and that kind of dictates where you're going to go to collect signatures.
Now, Mallory,
And so
I
I
think
don't,
this. I think if you and I, if you stand outside Soulard Farmers Market, collecting signatures, I've seen the guys. I like Soulard Farmers Market. Guys, the people just sign them, right? You stand out at Dollar General in Culin, Missouri, and folks ain't gonna, with a guy from the government or with a government paper wanting your name and address, they ain't gonna sign it, right? So they don't go down and talk to us hillbillies.
again, I think it's about population. It's about getting those numbers and in a short amount of time. And what the state is trying to do right now, what the Secretary of State is trying to do, is trying to limit the number of time that folks have to collect signatures on an abortion measure versus any other measure. Like the actions we've seen the state take are unprecedented, and
They are
they've been
unprecedented,
slapped
yeah.
back by courts, by the Missouri
Yep.
Supreme Court, who said, like, you are clearly acting out of bounds. You're not doing your job.
Do you think
Um,
they know it though? I think that Andrew Bailey's on the television show this week. I'm going to ask him this, and I think Jay Ashcroft knows they're doing things that are unprecedented. They're doing things that are stretch reason to block abortion access. I mean, I think they would just tell you that, right? I mean, that's. I'm not sure they're hiding it or they're like trying to do it covertly. I think they're pretty much saying we're doing things we've never done before to punish people or to disadvantage people that are trying to make abortion easier to access, right? I mean, I think they just say that.
I absolutely, they say. I think they're being, like I said, very transparent. And I think it's kind of sad to see their single minded obsession with trying to control women and families' decision making about their bodies and their families and their health care. While at the same time, we see millions of dollars for school children's lunches be let washed away, while we see Missouri has some of the highest rates of maternal birthing person mortality, of infant mortality. Well, kids are getting ready to go back to school and expecting across the state only 4 days of school in many places because we don't invest in our teachers or our classrooms. And through all of that, what they are obsessed with is controlling someone's ability to make a personal healthcare decision. And I think that this obsession with blocking the right to the ballot shows that they know that Missourians don't agree with that.
So you've told me you've been kind enough to educate me on when you worked in Republican politics. You're from the Boot Hill. You become very educated in pro-life politics. There's been some folks kind enough to educate me in pro-choice politics. It's something I've had to learn. I didn't just pick that up throughout my career. You always said that folks that abortion was 55-45 pro-choice in the state, and I was like, come on. The longer I've done this and talked to people, I'm not sure you're not right. I've always just felt like the intensity for those pro-choice people, that was not the reason they voted on large mass. They would vote for a Republican candidate because abortion was further down their list of things they cared about. But for many pro-lifers, it's the top thing. I got a mama that if you're not pro-life, I don't know that she really considers you're pitching on other issues. Now, you can argue that's smart or not, but I mean, I think that's accurate for a lot of people. Roe versus Wade, the first thing I thought of was that intensity is going to flip. And
Yeah,
have you seen that?
yeah, I don't think that's wrong. I think there's always been about 30% on either side that are the most focused on this issue
Sure.
above others. But I also know that for years, consistently polling has shown for years that more than 70% of Missourians, regardless of their personal opinions around abortion, do not support political interference in access to abortion. And I think that's the kind of issue at hand here, is that whatever someone personally feels, they don't think that it's politicians' business to be making that decision for themselves. You know, we've talked to thousands of Missourians across the state just in the past year about the issue. And what we got in response was really clear. Like, building a family, reproductive health care questions and decisions are complex. Pregnancy is nuanced and complex. And Missourians deserve trust and compassion and respect to make those personal decisions with their family and their doctor, their provider. And our politicians make it clear again and again that they have no trust, compassion, or respect for the people that they represent.
There are two things here. One, practically speaking, I mean, to me, yeah, I do think if rape and incest exceptions were on the ballot, I think it passes overwhelmingly. I think that Missourians were somewhere when they voted. I think pro-life was the better side to be on, but on the issue on itself, I believe some of the polling that it was very close. However you want to look at it, I think it was close. But if you told me it's 55-45 pro-choice, okay, I could see that. It feels like the Republicans, after the Roe versus Wade, took it and went farther. Most people, like Rick, I don't think understand all the intricacies of abortion law and policy or procedures, and they don't care. They probably just don't want to talk about it because, I mean, an abortion is not something that generally people view as happy dinner conversation. But when the Republicans took it all the way over to here to totally ban it, I think that's further than where your average Missourian is. Your rape and incest stuff, I think, is a lot more where they are. Exceptions are where they are. But the proposals that are put on the ballot, what will that actually look like? Because, I mean, to me, if you went to your rape and incest exceptions, you get a huge win. You try to broaden it past that, that's where you get some pushback, right?
So I think the issue with that is Missouri Medicaid has allowed abortion within a rape and incest exception or exemption for years. And data shows that over a 5-year period, it's like maybe 5 people get access to it. Meanwhile, we have some of the highest rates of interpersonal and domestic violence, as well as very high rates of men killing women partners in the entire country. So what we know is that those exceptions don't actually work. So for us, I'm less concerned about like whether politically that's something that moves forward if that doesn't give any actual access in reality, which is what we know. I think what we've seen now pass in 6 states around the country, or at least in 3 of those states in proactive measures, we've seen a broader right to reproductive freedom that, again, lets the person decide what's the best decision for themselves, not only with regards to terminating a pregnancy, with regards to abortion, but with regards to their birthing conditions and having just and equitable access to healthcare, having access to birth control or IVF. And we know that abortion is but one decision, one pregnancy outcome, and it's an issue that folks may or may not face in their life, but they face some level of the spectrum of reproductive healthcare, whether they're trying to have a baby, whether they're needing support to try to have a baby, whether they're trying to prevent pregnancy. Like, one woman, one person will face a range of these issues over their life, and so that's what deserves to be protected in
Well, I think
whatever
as a
kind of measure
father, I
we
mean,
pass.
you can't envision being in a situation, it's obviously not the one you want, but you can I think everybody can envision having a challenging conversation. You know what I mean? I think that's something that every parent can relate to, of possibly being in that spot. Now, what you do when you're in that spot, it's your business. But I think it's something I think every parent is on some level, as their children, especially their daughter, frankly, gets older, you do think about, okay, well, what if? And it hits you a little differently. Um, Let me just ask you this: Jefferson County, we'll just take Jeffco, used to be all Democrats down there, right? They were pro-life, pro-gun Democrats. Today, there's all Republicans down there, but they're pro-life, pro-gun Republicans. Talk to me when the issue was when abortion was legal to certain extents. However, all that, I don't think most people understood all the details of abortion policy, but they thought it was legal because Roe versus Wade was still the law. The Republicans ran and won elections on that. Now it's different, to where that issue's a little bit off the table because you're running on pro-life issue. Well, there's no abortions to push against. Are you doing that guy a favor, that woman a favor, that candidate a favor by bringing this back up into the Missouri political lexicon?
I don't think it's a matter of bringing it back up. I think right now, Missourians have no access to a fundamental, critical part of healthcare. People have to flee the state to access this healthcare, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, travel miles, and meanwhile, in a state that doesn't provide paid sick leave for workers, where workers have a dismal minimum wage, many people can't afford that or risk losing their job in order to make that transition, in order to,
But
again,
let me
leave
let
the
me
state
pitch to
to
you
access
though.
care.
But all those issues you've touched on that the legislature should be caring about, they probably care more about them if Jefferson County sends 3 Democrats instead of 7 or 8 Republicans to the legislature, right?
I don't know. Honestly, we're a nonpartisan organization. We're a single issue organization, and our single issue is to make sure people can access
Gotcha.
this basic healthcare.
Well, I mean, we are on the midweek update for this week in Missouri politics, so I had to ask you.
Right.
Let me ask you this: is the word healthcare what it boils down to? I would assume if you call abortion, refer to abortion as healthcare, you're 80-90% likely to think it should be legal in some form. Um, if is changing the lexicon to calling an abortion procedure or whatever you put under the umbrella of abortion healthcare, that seems to be the word that if you get somebody to calling it healthcare, it's hard to be against that, right?
I mean, abortion is healthcare. Abortion is a medical procedure. Doctors and providers learn it when they go to medical school or do their training. And what we've seen in Missouri is we are running OBGYNs and maternity care providers out of our state because they're not able to practice to the full scope of their training. So not only is abortion healthcare, but when we attack this part of healthcare, we're actually attacking reproductive healthcare, maternal healthcare, women's healthcare across the board because people have less access when doctors don't want to be in our state. So
I
yes,
mean, but
abortion is
is it a
healthcare.
cocktail of several things? It is you may have some doctors that believe that feel like they can't practice to the full extent, so they're going to go to somewhere they can. But also, the public healthcare system's been cut or not expanded. I mean, it's probably a cocktail of a little bit of everything. It's that investment dollars you talk about, plus some pro-choice doctors believing they can't practice like they want to or they feel they should, so they leave. Right? It's probably a mix of both, right?
I'm sure, but we've seen reports from med students who don't want to practice, who don't want
I
to
can see
come to
that.
our state because they can't get the training that they need in our state. And so we are also like cutting short a talent
Can you not
pipeline.
train? You can't. I know there was just a lot made of it. I don't know that it's true, but it was accepted as fact in the Senate one night that they do at BJC, or I'm sorry, that the WashU Medical School, they do train doctors on how to do an abortion. Does that not
There,
happen
there
anymore?
are there are places in the state that still provide abortions within the medical emergency
Yeah.
exception that is still allowed. However, there are thousands of med students in our state, and you can't imagine that all of them are getting the training that they need. And as well in other parts of the state. What about Mizzou students in Columbia who have to travel out of the state in order to get the full training that they need in order to pass their exams and go on to become an obstetrician?
So give me break your Stein of knowledge out. Although I should have, if we'd have planned this better, which we don't. The majority of times we don't plan a whole lot. So I would have sent you a Stein. But what will the general language be? Oh, there we go. Cheers. What will the general language be on the referendum Missourians get to vote on next year?
I hope Missourians get an opportunity to vote on something next year, and I wish that I could tell you, but when in our state it is now back in court between the secretary and the ACLU of Missouri to figure out what that final language will be. Um, I don't know.
What is
I can
that
kind of
in your
only
mind? What is
imagine.
that? What the language they have? What does that do? How is a young woman's life different if the language that's presented now is whatever the ballot language is, the measure that's getting signatures, if that becomes law, how does that change a woman's options in the state of Missouri?
Yeah. So I mean, right now, just for clarity's sake, no measure is getting signatures. There are a number of measures still on the table that are in court. But I think with any of the policies that I have seen, what changes is a person gets to make their own decision about their pregnancy outcome in consult with their doctor. What also changes is we have an opportunity to see a whole additional level of protections for other reproductive health needs. It's a huge frustration within the IVF community, within the fertility community, that those procedures aren't often covered by insurance. And so what would it look like to start building a Missouri where all options and all support is provided for people regarding their pregnancy hopes and dreams?
All right, now break it down for me. It always feels like, to me, Republicans are definitely coming for abortion. It's so funny. People talk being conservative, but there's no question they're willing to use the government to get in your life. It is the definition of liberal. They want a bigger government with more rules that they're going to enforce. And if it's on abortion, liberal as they can be, as far as having the government come in and tell you what to do. They're generally pretty proud of that. I've always kind of felt like, in a way, folks that talked about birth control, they're trying to pull birth control into the abortion issue because even your most right-wing Republican probably is for their wife taking birth control, right? Especially as Joan Bray would say, for sure, their girlfriend. So is that real? Just between you and me, it feels like sometimes folks on the pro-choice side try to pull birth control into stuff, and it's almost like, but really?
Yeah, I don't think it's our side that's trying to pull birth control in. You might remember 2 years ago with the whole FRA fight, Republicans are trying to conflate abortion and birth control. We've seen that in several bills this past 2023 session, where they were trying to target IUDs, long-acting birth control, by claiming that they were abortifacients. So I don't think it's our side that's trying to conflate these. I think that it's Republicans who, again, don't understand how pregnancy works and are trying to further control people's healthcare decisions and control their bodies and what they're able to do. They'd rather women all be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen than to
you
be able
believe that,
to make
really?
their own decisions.
You really believe that?
They're the ones that raise the issue.
Yeah, I get the perspective, and I think it's probably true with some, but I don't think that's your average member of the legislature. I don't think that. Well, let me ask you this. Let's break down the politics. Well, I know that you're a nonpartisan organization, issue based, but those issues have an effect on politics.
Sure.
Break down the mindset for a voter that is pro-choice, maybe a little more pro-choice than they were before because Roe versus Wade changed how they view the situation. But they vote Republican. How do you convince that person that voting for while you could go to the ballot, I guess I'm sure the Republicans will want this on in August if they can get it on. If you go to the polls to vote for abortion access, which in other states looks like what people are doing, but how would you convince someone not to vote? Let's just take the partisan label off it. How would you convince them when they're going to the polls to vote for a pro-choice referendum to also vote for a pro-choice candidate? Because that's not what they're doing historically.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's tough because there's two things happening, right? On one hand, yeah, it's really exciting to see a candidate like Crystal Quaid running for governor, being openly pro-choice, openly in support of abortion access. But at the same time, abortion actually isn't a partisan issue. People of all political backgrounds, of all religious faiths have abortion, whether or not they talk about it.
Kind of a partisan political issue, right?
Yes, but in terms of what people want with regard to their own access to healthcare, like what I know is that nobody wants Mike Parson or Mary Elizabeth Coleman in their bedroom. They want people.
Well, I mean, Teresa and Chris may be
decisions.
exceptions to that, right? That may be the two exceptions, but I take your point.
There might be a third.
Oh no, come on.
I think that it's.
But in all seriousness, I think that I see your point about that extra control, but there is. I mean, I have no doubt there are people who are pro-choice to certain degrees, right? If you ask them privately as a friend in a conversation, they would tell you they're pro-choice. However, they voted for Mike Parson. I mean, hell, 60% of the damn state did. That person, how do you convince somebody? Assume it could be a pro-choice Republican versus, Joe Teasdale and Kit Bond ran. I got my Kit Bond thing here. Teasdale and Bond was the last time you had a pro-choice Republican versus a pro-life Catholic Democrat in Teasdale. I guess that was in 80, but how do you make that distinction? How would you, if you were back in your early days and you did a canvas for somebody and you were making you come in, had a glass, it's hot, you're out knocking doors, they come in, have a glass of tea, you're sitting having tea at a kitchen table. And in conversation, you can tell they're pro-choice, but they're going to vote for a Republican, or they're going to vote for a pro-life candidate. How do you convince them to consider the other option? What's the argument there?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think we've long seen people advance these progressive ballot measures in our state, whether it's Medicaid or cannabis decriminalization, while continuing to vote for conservative leadership. And I think it's a matter of showing them that these politicians who are trying to exert more power and control over their bodies and lives aren't on their side. They don't care about the nuance of someone faced with a fetal anomaly or a young person who can't afford to lose their job and have another kid when they're raising two. They don't care about the nuance of people's personal experiences or lives. And I think it's a matter of asking, when have you felt so powerless like that? And don't you think that the person that represents you should be on your side?
I think there's a little bit of that I watched this in how Missouri Right to Life Street in the Capitol. Some folks in the media just look at them like they have two heads. When even by a pro-choice poll, damn near half the state agrees with their overall take on the issue. I think there is a level of respect your pitch shows that I don't think is always shown in discussing abortion from both sides, frankly. But what you just laid out was a I mean, that sounds like you could maybe persuade someone. Some of these arguments on both sides almost would make you think, well, whatever the hell you are, I don't want to be part of that, right? Because it's just it's a lot. I mean, Flat Doug. I mean, Kelton cut out Flat Doug. That's kind of on him. But Flat Doug would agree with me on that. He's just out of this shot. He's over here looming over our discussion. Okay, give me some predictions here. I do think the court. It would feel like to me, you're going to have enough money. The court is going to interject here and make them wrap this up by September, right? They're going to give you some ballot language you with signatures on, right? Are you give me Stein knowledge predictions by veto session? Do you have some language?
I don't know. The court date right now is set for September 11th, and I will tell you one day to the next.
Halloween.
I am flipped of whether a campaign will be able to move forward
by Halloween. Oh, you got this. We're gonna break this right here on this week's Surprise Midweek update for Halloween this year. You're not even gonna believe this is so cool. Gussie is gonna be Cody Rhodes. No shit. And I'm gonna be the American Dream doth their road, baby, the son of the plumber, being on hard times. And if you don't know who that is, Mallory, you should Google Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, and his son Cody. And you'll see my Halloween costume is going to be just freaking great. By the time I am the American Dream doth their road, will you have ballot language?
Scott, I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Give me your predictions, right? Kelton will erase it if you're wrong. When I'm wrong on a prediction, he just erases the tape and puts it back in the system somehow. Okay, so by Thanksgiving, will you have ballot language?
I think there will be language by Thanksgiving. I don't know.
I think maybe Halloween
that will move forward or not, though.
I think somewhere I'll be dressed as only the American Dream doth their road could, and the yellow polka dot, and I'll be asked to sign something. I'll be like, up in the 8th district, and they'll be like, oh, they'll write me off completely and not care. Or I'll sign it at Virgil Runnels, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and that probably will invalidate it. So when we have the signatures by, we have the signatures by. Something tells me you've got the money to collect these signatures. I mean, essentially, you have professional firms that collect these. I think Roe told me it was like a 1.1 now, 1.2 with COVID to get the signatures collected. They probably have it because of the cycles. The inflation for wages has shifted a little bit. Maybe 1.25 now with how hard it is to get people to do some of these jobs. You've got the money to collect signatures, right? If you get ballot language, the money's there. Is that correct?
I think there's nothing about this process that will be simple or easy. I think that you look at Ohio and it costs them several millions dollars just to collect signatures. The Michigan campaign was coming up on $50 million. Like
to collect signatures?
No, for the whole.
Okay,
Michigan
to buy. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, but tell me this: if you're a pro-choice person in the state and you're watching this, and you're one of the we're one of the leaders of the pro-choice movement in the state. Is there the money there to collect the signatures if you get to that stage? which I think the court is going to step in at some point and say, now leave these people alone, let them go get signatures.
I hope the court steps in to say that. I think that if we have the opportunity to move forward, the investment will come. I think for years, Missouri has been written off as a flyover country, right? We've all heard that. And I think that what Ohio is showing people, what we are showing people through things like Medicaid expansion is that there is a need to invest in Missouri, and there is a movement in Missouri that wants people to be able to make their own.
I'm kind of like John Dutton with the right wingers. Just keep flying. Don't stop here. We don't want you here. He doesn't want you in Montana. We don't want you in Missouri. I'm a big fan of the right wing nuts. Just stay in Washington. I think we should build the wall, but it should be on the west bank of the Mississippi to keep all the East Coast sons of bitches out. So I do think at some point the court steps in and says, okay, damn it, there's rules. Apply them to these people, maybe be stern with it, but knock it off. That'll be by the time I'm in my Halloween costume. By the time it's Valentine's Day, I feel like you've got a bunch of these collected, and you probably meet the deadline. I assume the Republicans will move heaven and earth to make sure this is an August ballot measure because they don't want to deal with this in November. Am I right? I guess it's what you guys are assuming.
I don't know. I also think we don't know what will happen in session next year and whether they'll try to put forward another attack on the IP process to pull a repeat Ohio and to potentially have an attack in August and this. And I don't know. I think it could go a lot.
I'm going to call and ask him, but I mean, Speaker Plocker wanted IP reform. That was his big deal. If you look what happened in Ohio, I mean, Dean Plocker's not a dumb guy. I mean, that's got to give you a little pause, I would think.
I think so. And I saw some article this morning where they named that this might dampen people's energy in trying this again.
I think you have a better shot at IP reform if it's not an abortion issue right now. I mean, if you guys have your issue and you write something that you win, then the abortion fight's going to flare right back up. It's going to go to the legislature. The legislature's going to try to attack whatever you pass and nitpick little pieces of it. But it kind of takes it out of the initiative. It separates it because right now, if I was for initiative petition reform, I would want it wrapped up in abortion because you come off a similar state and a trouncing. I mean, if I'm them, I'm like, well, this is probably not the year to conflate these two issues. I would want to wait and come back when the issues aren't conflated.
I wonder, outside of the issue and the question of abortion access, of whether they care about reforming the initiative petition process. It seems like this is the single-minded focus of it.
I think you're wrong about that. I think there is you listed from Medicaid expansion, minimum wage stuff. There's a long list of proposals Republicans have not wanted that Democrats couldn't get enough people elected to enact, but went to the ballot and got them enacted, which I've always wondered at times. I remember Stephen Weber was doing an interview, maybe it was with me, and he talked about how maybe set the Democrat Party back some, that policies that are popular with the people can get elected without voting Democrat. But I think abortion is part of everything now. That's one thing since Roe versus Wade, it's shocked me to see how now abortion is part of every possible thing. And I've even been surprised by that. But I think that's more than just abortion. I think there's other things that they want that change the block. And look, if the Democrats were in charge, like California, Republicans go to the ballot, just like the Democrats do here. If the Democrats were in charge, they probably wouldn't like it if Republicans went around them. I mean, I think it's more about power than an issue. I think there's a broad set of issues that Republicans lose control of because they don't address them in the legislature and the public wants them, so they go find a way to get them. It's interesting to me. So give me let's say you get something reasonable. Give me the prediction. We're not going to hold you to this, but you're going to be 55-45, you're going to be 52-48. Where are you going to be on this? I assume you think you're going to win, right?
I think if Missourians had the opportunity to go to the ballot and vote for abortion access, that abortion would win.
Yeah, give me a number now.
I won't deign to give you a number.
You're gonna be. It's like Price is Right. You're gonna go safe and go 51-49 and beat it. You're gonna go bold and go 60-40. Come on now, give me something.
Oh,
I'll go first. If you have something on the ballot and it's rape and incest exceptions, I think that's a 60-40, maybe even more. I don't even think you'd have serious opposition to that. I think people would just know they couldn't win. If you get something more general that could be, that if you get something that Republicans conservatives or pro-lifers could find something to make egregious and point to as extreme. I think that gets a little tougher. I think that in an August election, when you have a lot of Republicans turning out to vote for county commissioners, primaries, you're going to have some aggressive statewide primaries. I think it's going to be closer. I think if you had something reasonable, you'd have a funded opposition, and getting a yes, which most Missourians, as you know, are inclined to push no or skip it. I think you're talking about a close election, 52, 51%. And really, if you had it, I think if you had that in November, I think it's a 55. If it's a reasonable kind of moderate access to abortion, I think it's 55-45. But in that August environment, I think it could be a little tighter. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. I think if we look at the Medicaid numbers, that was
Yeah.
similar. I do think, though, that we've seen in Kansas and obviously this week in Ohio that abortion has shown in these similarly situated states to be a motivating issue for voters to turn out at the polls. It's hard to say in a presidential year what that's going to look like, though.
So last question. If you have a Crystal Quaid on the ballot, you have Robbie Sauls in Independence, you have Stephen Weber in Columbia. They're trying to hold or flip tough seats. Does a win in August give them some momentum? Does a win in August give Crystal Quaid something she can take? I mean, look, the fact is, Republican campaigns are becoming more and more financed by Washington, D.C. interest, but Democrat campaigns for a long time have been financed, a lot of it by out-of-state interest. Can Crystal Quaid take a victory in August from your efforts and get people interested in the race and raise money off that?
I think so, but again, I think we're really like a point I really want to hammer is that we don't think this is just Democrats who are going to come out and vote for this. And so
Well, I mean, in this state, you got to get some Republicans to switch over to win, right?
Exactly. And I think personally, as someone who votes Democrat, would I like to see this bring momentum like it did in Michigan? Sure. But I think broadly, and as someone dedicated to ensuring abortion rights and access, it's not a Republican Democrat issue because abortion impacts everybody, no matter their political background or their religious background. And I think that when people are in that private space of their ballot box and making a decision that they know could affect them or their children or grandchildren someday, that they'll make the decision that keeps politicians out of their exam rooms and bedrooms.
Mallory Schwartz, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate it. Hey, tell folks how they can get a hold of you.
Thank you, Scott. So I am with Abortion Action Missouri, formerly known as Pro-Choice Missouri. You can find us at abortionactionmissouri.org and email myself at abortionactionmissouri.org also.
Thank you so much. Always appreciate the visit.
Thank you so much.
Was Mallory Schwartz. I'll tell you, I like talking to Mallory because she has a perspective that I don't have. She has an experience I don't have. And a lot of times, I watch other people, they'll dig into this and they'll hit the high points with somebody. Mallory's somebody that understands the issue, as you could tell, very well, and not just the issue of the policy issue, but the politics of it. But more than that, she like how she would talk to somebody. I think, people that work in it every day, it's like a doctor that sees blood. He's like, whatever. When somebody talks about Donald Trump over the table, but I hear it so much, I'm like, whatever. Mallory can see through some of that, and I always respect someone that's deep in an issue that can maybe look at the other side and see how they got there. Because I think you can't persuade anybody unless you can kind of walk a mile in their shoes a little bit and kind of see where they're coming from. I liked her. It was more of an empathetic way that might actually persuade someone, as opposed to I think in this issue, both sides browbeat a little bit. I thought really her great point was discussing. I don't think that Andrew Bailey and Jay Ashcroft give a damn that somebody says they're going outside. I think they're making sure people know they're going outside the norms of their office in order to make this harder for these signature gatherers. I also think a lot of people that vote for them probably think that's a fine thing. It'll be interesting. I don't think there'll be a price to pay in the primaries. Probably there's a benefit from them. A benefit from if I had to guess, a benefit from them going outside the box in the short term. They're both in very competitive primaries next summer. In the long term, I think it could be an interesting thing. Is this where Democrats start to begin their comeback? I think Republicans started their comeback with Newt Gingrich in the state and started building numbers, and Clinton was a tough wall because he could speak Missourian. But then I think abortion really helped them move forward and go forward, and guns for that matter. So I'm interested to see, is this going to be the start of a Democrat resurgence, or not? My gut tells me the Democrat Party in the state would be better off not kicking the issue of abortion. That's if that dog could sleep, I think they're better off right now. However, I bet you in the 15th senatorial district, one of the most pro-life people I know, Andrew Koenig, who I believe does not want women to be barefoot and pregnant, I think he truly believes it, right? I believe Andrew Koenig in his heart's pro-life. I think he's a sincere, honest guy. I think in his Senate district, boy, I bet that issue's, if I had to guess, in the 15th, it's elected a Republican, Koenig, Schmidt, Mike Gibbons. You go on back. I mean, I think there's a if I had to guess, that's a pro-choice district today. And now that the intensity is flipped because the law's flipped, I'll bet you it's a little more. I'll bet that intensity is rising, and I wonder how that'll affect. Is it to the point where people in the 15th are going to want to make sure they get an electable candidate? I don't think so. I think you have to prove that you can be beat before the party cares about electability again. I think electability matters. You watch Republicans getting behind Eric Mullen and independents because they're trying to flip a seat, and electability really matters. And so they have to go get somebody that can win like he can win. It's a big deal. With the Democrats in Columbia, they want to win that Senate seat. And the best way to win that Senate seat is probably getting behind Stephen Weber. And they kind of are. But electability matters. Let Stephen Weber have that seat for 8 years, and all of a sudden electability won't be as important if they don't think they'll lose it. I think you have to go prove it. Like if the Democrats won the 15th, then I think you'd see people in the 15th, the Republicans, get more serious about electability. It'll be, and that'll be interesting to me to see. You're seeing a couple state rep seats switch within that 15th and the old footprint of the 15th. And will you see that the Senate races are getting a little tighter? There was a legitimate campaign by Tev Lavender. I think this time the Democrats will field a legitimate candidate, and I think abortion could matter more than maybe people are thinking. Is it an issue that motivates people to vote? We'll see. I think the 15th is your litmus test of the Republicans need a good candidate, then it probably doesn't matter. But if they don't have that David Gregory type candidate, then I think you start to see that issue could become a bigger deal. And it's going to cost Republicans a lot of money to hold on to that seat, which would be an interesting thing to see how abortion, the 15th may be ground zero for that this year. So to see how people go. But it's always interesting to me how, yes, there are pro-choice people that will vote loyally Republican. How do you make that break? Because if there is 55% of the Missourians that are pro-choice, boy, there's not that people that show up to vote. So I wonder how much the intensity grows. I don't know that it's not best to let it set, but I mean, obviously you got groups that aren't going to let it set. And look, just like I believe Andrew Koenig sincerely pro-life, and I respect him for it. These people, I get some of the texts I'm getting and comments, but these folks are pro-choice. They mean it. It's not a game. They actually just believe that you should have a right to this. And it's interesting to me. If you call it healthcare, I'll bet you're for it. If you don't call it healthcare, I bet you're not. That's kind of how things are going. Anyway, I like to bring you different perspectives. I really enjoy bringing Susan Klein with Missouri Right to Life's perspective. Mallory is somebody that, as you can tell, very serious, knows her issue, and can talk to people, which is not always the case with people that are, when you live these groups so deeply, it's very hard to be able to still connect with regular folks. Mallory is somebody that can, why I like to talk to her, like to have her on. Hope you'll join us Sunday. We're going to talk to a guy that I think is Kelton, would you say he's a skosh pro-life?
Just a tad.
Andrew Bailey is it. Now, here's the thing about Andrew Bailey. I should have brought this up, and I didn't. Andrew Bailey has adopted foster kids. And I'll tell you, like with Mary Elizabeth Coleman, you say what you will, but I have some respect for somebody. I think it gives you, honestly, more credibility on the issue. I'm a white guy. I always sometimes when I talk about when abortion's being talked about, I feel like maybe I should just shut the hell up. Not that anybody's says that to me, but just as it is different for a man to talk about it than a woman. But I do think someone that's actually adopted foster kids, that's that's a sacrifice, and that I'm sure they bring a lot of joy. But I mean, I have some more, I have some respect for folks that do that. I think that gives you a different credibility when you talk about these issues. So we'll talk to Andrew Bailey. I'm going to ask him, are you just wearing your office out to prove a point? Because I think that whether it's Jay or Andrew, they tell you, yeah, we're doing unprecedented stuff to block this. I mean, if they didn't, they're bullshitting you. So I think they just would say, yeah, we're going all in because that's how much we believe in the pro-life cause. We'll see. I think Bill Eigel thought he was going all in for the pro-life cause, and then they endorsed his opponent. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. Will be the issue next year. I, as you know, get very tired of talking about social issues, but when you've cut all the taxes you can cut and you've got all the guns you can give out, social issues is what we're going to talk about. So we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about them with Andrew Bailey, Missouri's Attorney General, Sunday on This Week in Missouri Politics.